Government has been continuing to mislead people for a long time now. The goal is division, which then benefits them rather than benefiting us. Let's go ahead and take a look at this tweet that I put out today. Bush added 5.85 trillion to the national debt. Then we saw Obama adding 8.6 trillion to the national debt. Trump adding 6.9 trillion to national debt. Then Biden has already added 5 trillion to the national debt. And I tweeted, when will people realize that they only divide us politically so they can keep getting rich while doing a terrible job running the country? It's really sad to see what has come of the government lately. The government used to be, in the United States, way more organized and way more specific about the future plans, but now, though, it has gone to an extremely chaotic state that may be very hard to recover from. A lot of people are not even understanding truly how bad the implications of this could potentially be, and hopefully you have an idea. This is not a partisan thing. I'm not saying Republicans are right. I'm not saying Democrats are right. I'm not trying to advocate for any side over the other. And the issue here is that whenever I call it one specific thing that one side has done, then everyone who's on the opposite side will applaud, and everyone who's on that side will then get mad. And yet, there are bad things that both sides do all the time, and it's only getting worse and worse and worse because they know they can get away with it to a higher level. Now, it's extremely, extremely disappointing that that's the current state of politics. As you know, today, you probably heard about it. A bill was just passed. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act. The truth is, it's not going to reduce inflation, but I'm not saying that because I'm trying to slam Biden or I'm trying to slam Democrats. Plenty of times, we saw Republicans trying to do the same thing. They would pass bills that were similar, were supposed to do this, supposed to do that. It never works. The only thing that actually works to reduce inflation is if you are spending less money than what you are bringing in. And the governments of recent are not wanting to do that whatsoever. They're doing a very bad job of it, in fact, and they continue to not care about our future economically. They just want to have power now, and they're using that to take massive advantage of us, unfortunately. Hopefully, we can continue to call them out at a high level. If you agree that we need to be voting out other politicians, you're welcome to press like and help this video get seen by even more people. That will help to spread the message that we cannot put up with this anymore. To go into more specifics here, because I love specifics, if we look back, we can see Woodrow Wilson in 1921, 1.9 billion surplus, 9.8 billion surplus. So he was spending in the billions over. Oh my gosh, how could he? Billions over what the national amount coming in was in terms of revenue by the government versus the amount that was being spent. Then we see 614 million, 1 billion with Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge, 673 million, 1.1 billion, 907 million. So around 1 billion. Herbert Hoover, 2.8 billion, 3 billion, so a little bit more, but nothing crazy. Then we see here 64 billion, 57 billion. That's actually starting to get a little crazy with Roosevelt. Roosevelt put in some plans in place that started to get into some serious spending there. Oh my gosh, that's insane. How could he? He spent 740 million in 1 year, 57 billion in another. Oh my gosh, that's insane. Harry Truman. A little bit of sarcasm here, and you'll see why once I get to the later part of this. But 6.9 billion Harry Truman was, I believe, his highest spending year toward the end. 5.8 billion for Dwight Eisenhower, 8.3 billion, 2.6 billion. You can see all these are in the a few billion range. Lyndon B. Johnson in the few billion range. Richard Nixon, same thing. He went up to his highest 29, 30 billion. Gerald Ford, 78 billion. Then we go to Jimmy Carter. He went all up to 90 billion. And the first time we saw it crossing 100 billion was in the first year of Reagan. So between Jimmy Carter and Reagan, both of them spending significantly more than their predecessors. Gerald Ford did the same exact thing. Then now we move up, and this is just the facts. People hate this. People want you to only say, okay, this party's good, that party's bad. Well, let's actually look at all the details and actually decide what is a good policy and what's a bad policy. I think that's the way to do it. George W. Bush, pretty big increase as well there. 376 billion, 432 billion, 399 billion. So you see it going from around a couple billion that was spent in excess over causing the deficit to now going up to 347 billion. A massive increase, but even that is nothing compared to where we're about to be. Then Bill Clinton comes in, he does around the same thing. 280 billion, 189 billion, 130 billion. Then we get all the way up to Bush. He starts to increase it to an even higher level, 421 billion, 596, 574, 501, 1 trillion actually. The first year was in 2008 right there. Insane spending coming in. Then Barack Obama, he goes all the way up to 1.6, 1.2, 1.28. His biggest year, 1.4 trillion. So how did we go from politicians spending around $1 billion over the deficit to now spending $1 trillion, which is insanely insanely different, obviously. I mean, that's just an absolutely ridiculous thing that this was allowed to happen. It should have never been allowed to happen. Now we are in a position where the government thinks it's okay to go crazy on spending. It is massively hurting our economy. All they had to do was just simply not spend too much more than what we are bringing in. It's not that complicated. It's actually extremely straightforward. Just run the country well. Why can't they do that? Why is every single politician refusing to do that? And why do we have armies of people who pretend like it's okay and say, okay, support our politician, when your politician is not doing a good job on the most basic and fundamental thing that the government's supposed to do? All the other things, none of that will have nearly as big of an impact in terms of the government's power as this one specific thing, what the government is spending versus what they are bringing in. You can put taxes here, put taxes there, increase spending here, decrease spending there, but at the end of the day, the overall amount is the most significant thing in terms of inflation, and it's having a seriously negative impact. Now, then we see Trump, 1.3 trillion, 1.2 trillion, 1.5 trillion, so around the same as Obama per year, with the exception of 2020, 4.2 trillion, but did start to go down in 2021. Then we now have Joe Biden, who's spending around 2-point-something trillion per year. So it's continuing to get worse and worse and worse over the years, and no one wants to call it out for their own politician. They only want to call it out for the other side. But if that's what's happening, then it will never get better. We have to call it out no matter who is doing it, or else it will never get fixed, unfortunately. Nathan says, bro, they're brainwashed. Yeah, I mean, that's a fact. There's way too many brainwashed people. Us in this community, we understand. We're investors. We're people who actually get the economy and get the market. We're not going to be brainwashed. We're not going to be falling for those stupid things. But everyone else out there seems to be way more likely to do it. Now, it's not everybody. Some people don't. But the vast majority of people in the political discourse today seem to have been wildly brainwashed into believing that they should support a party over supporting good policies. And I think that is really the main reason why this has been allowed to happen over these years. Popularity has been more important than actually doing a good job when it comes to spending, the primary job of the government. Really, the only thing that they actually need to do a good job of in order for the country to do well is that. All the other stuff, sure, they can help here, they can help there. There's some things they need to regulate, but at the end of the day, none of that will actually have as big of a long-lasting impact as what is happening with spending. I mean, yeah, maybe a couple issues will have a decent impact, but like, for example, foreign policy, stuff like that, okay, sure. I mean, that can absolutely have a big impact. But in terms of solid, concrete stuff that we should clearly have evidence of by now, they don't seem to care. And it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. Now let's actually look at what was in this bill. So we saw energy and climate, 386 billion. That goes to clean electricity tax cuts, 161 billion. Air pollution, 40 billion. Individual clean energy incentives, 37 billion. Clean manufacturing tax credits, 37. Clean fuel and vehicle tax credits, 36. Conservation, rural development, forestry, 35 billion. 27 billion for building efficiency, electrification, transmission, and other energy and climate spending, 14 billion. Then healthcare, 64 billion. 34 billion as well for Part D redesign. So, I mean, you look at that stuff, none of that is like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Yeah, sure, it'll be great to have, you know, a cleaner air quality. It would be great to have some of these incentives for companies. The problem is not if it would be good or not for those things to be implemented. The problem is that if you wanted to spend money on that, then you shouldn't have spent trillions and trillions of dollars on other stuff. You have to pick and choose what things you want to spend on. And instead of doing that, the government's just like, okay, everything we want to spend on, we're just going to do it all. We don't care. We're not going to pick and choose. That's not how life works, unfortunately, and the consequences of it will be extremely, extremely bad for all of us who are living, not just in the United States, but in the world more broadly. People just really, truly need to wake up at this point and see exactly what's happening here. I mean, a lot of people say, okay, well, look, all these policies are good. Some people like them, some people don't. That is not the point. It's not about if they're good or not. It's about what were we sacrificing to get them? Was that worth it? Was it worth it to spend all the money on the other stuff instead of this? Which thing are you going to choose to spend money on? Because there's not an infinite money supply. If people aren't even working at as high of a level, then it's going to make it even harder. So a lot of tough things are going on here. And you could also argue, oh, sure, well, the reason why these presidents are spending so much is because of the situations that happened while they were president. Look at what happened with VID. The situation in the world, right, with Donald Trump. Surely he only spent more because of that. Surely Obama only spent more because of the economic crisis. Same with Bush. It was just the economic crisis. And same with Biden. The same situation with VID in the world. Also, look what happened with Ukraine. That's the problem, you see. It's not actually them spending too much. But here's where it gets into the actual details. So what you're telling me is that every single president before them did not have to spend that much to solve issues. We only have issues now. Issues are a new thing. We've never had issues before. Now all of a sudden, every single president has some major issue that they have to spend insane amounts of money on that we don't have. But before that, that was never the case. Well, how did they deal with it before? Well, they weathered a little bit of a storm temporarily, and then they ended up building back and bouncing extremely strong afterwards. That's extremely common. That's how you're supposed to handle situations like this. But if you throw a bunch of money at it and try to solve it right away, maybe you'll be able to solve some of the issues quickly, but the consequence is that then it will just delay the economic impact further down the line. And it really becomes an issue when you have president after president after president after president continuing to compound those delays of the economic pain down the line. Now we have multiple presidents in a row, many presidents in a row that have delayed. So we have a huge bundle of economic pain that we have to deal with all at once at some point in the near future. Instead of doing one big ball at once, wouldn't it have been better to just take a little hit here, and then a little hit there, and then a little hit there, and bounce back each time? Obviously, that's significantly smarter of a strategy, and yet, the politicians don't seem to care. They don't seem to worry about that. Pushing businesses to do better, rather than trying to put in packages, there's so many different things that can be implemented without having to spend large amounts of money, and yet, they are lining their pockets with this. Don't you realize? When Nancy Pelosi is making a bunch of money, when other Republicans are making a bunch of money, it's not just Democrats, right? I say Nancy Pelosi because she's probably the most famous in terms of people knowing that she makes a ton of money off of her stocks, but it's not just her. Unusual Whales has done a report. Republicans, Democrats, a lot of them making hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions, millions at the more basic level of dollars by investing in companies that are benefiting massively from these government policies. So when they decide to spend $700 billion on this economic package, you better believe Nancy Pelosi and Republicans in the Senate and other Republicans in the Congress, you better believe that they decided to put investments into those companies that would benefit before this news even got released that this thing could even be a bill. They were already preparing ahead of time for it to go through, and that's why their economic incentive is there as politicians. However, it's not there for us as people, and if they continue to spin like crazy, it's only going to make that ball of pain that's coming in the future even bigger and bigger and bigger. And unfortunately, the only way that I see as is a smart path against this, and we're going to finally talk about Dogecoin. It took all the way 12 minutes of me ranting for us to finally get to Dogecoin and Bitcoin. Dogecoin and Bitcoin right now are significantly smarter to hold than fiat currency, especially when the government is continuing to do a bad job, because Dogecoin will continue to only have a small inflation rate that goes down over time. Bitcoin will continue to have a small inflation rate that goes down over time. The US dollar, on the other hand, could absolutely collapse at any point. I'd hate to see that. I am someone who likes the US dollar. I want to be successful, but when it's not, you have to acknowledge that, and you have to say, okay, what am I going to do to protect myself? And the answer, for many people, as it should be, is to put money into cryptocurrency. That's a very smart thing to do right now. It's really one of the only ways you can protect yourself from cryptocurrency, or you can protect yourself from the value of fiat currency going down. That's why the countries that ban it are doing something extremely dangerous for their people. Because if you're in China and it's banned and you can't access it, of course some people will anyway, right? A lot of people will find a way around those bans, like VPNs, for example. Not that hard. Highly encourage it if you're in China. Yeah, that's right, Chinese government. I said it. What are you going to do about it? Anyway, if you live in China, right, and use a VPN or whatever, that's one thing. But if you don't know how to use a VPN, then you're blocked from accessing cryptocurrency. And then if the Chinese government decides to do a lot of extra spending, which they actually are right now, a lot of governments across the world are doing this, then you have nowhere to put your money to protect against it, which makes it even worse, because now you don't even have an out. A lot of people will say maybe this is some sort of economic reset that they're trying to push forward, but the only problem with that is that then, if this is all planned, there's two options, right? Either this is planned and they're actually trying to accomplish some sort of thing with it, whether it's nefarious or not. Of course, we know they're benefiting financially from it, but there has to be something else, right? That can't be their only motivation, can it? They have to have some sort of excuse to go to people who are giving them questions about it, right? And so it certainly could be the case that some people are trying to push some sort of economic reset. However, if that is the case, then all it would do is just eliminate the middle class, because rich people put money into things that go up over time. Like, for example, putting money into houses that you can rent out. And I will say, I do have a rental property myself. That has gone up in value because of inflation. And so I'm able to be protected from that, but is that really fair to the middle class to do an economic reset? No, it's absolutely not, because it only protects people who have the ability to afford something that can go up in terms of assets, and that's why cryptocurrency is so valuable and important, because it does not require you to have some large amount of money to be able to put your money into something that can go up in value as inflation causes problems. That's the beauty of it. It gives every single person, middle class, rich, poor, it doesn't matter who you are, you have the ability to have an out. You can escape the fiat currency loophole and get to some economic freedom, which is absolutely good. Understand this, invest in crypto now. Make no mistake in it. They hate it. We love it. God bless, says Taters and Eggs. I happen to agree with you there. Terry Line says rant, rant, rant. Hopefully you enjoyed the rant. Get roasted as well, says Pork Chop. He's the government needs to get roasted is what he's referring to. I happen to agree with you there. Anyway, that right there is what we like to see. I have a few cool things coming on the show. Make sure to subscribe with the notifications on, and I will see you in the next video.